This customer rolled in saying that the car drives like normal, but he's had a weird sound the past week and wanted it looked at. The owner of this Pontiac came in complaining about poor acceleration and wanted the mechanics to fix it. Turns out that someone had poured about 4 jars of O'Keeffe's hand lotion into the engine, which had caused a lot of damage.
It ain't got no gay.
This car had been rolling around on hopes and dreams for quite a while, and when asked about it, the customer did not want new tires. Customer came in saying that he had tried installing a new air filter and wanted to know if he got it right. And the owner of this car said that he had a funny smell when he turned on the AC, but he couldn't figure out where it came from. Turned out to be a pretty bad fuel leak. And this guy had done some wiring work on his car, but reinstalled the battery pretty carelessly and forgot to tighten the battery mount properly, which resulted in a bunch of electrical issues and a no-start concern. The owner of this truck said that it had felt a little strange lately, but also mentioned that his nephew had worked on it recently and he had said that it was alright. In that case, I guess taking a dump in your pants and walking around with it all day is alright too. And these two pickups were in for some new oil and filters when one of the turbo housings just exploded and caused quite the mess in the shop. Customer came in saying that his daughter had hit a curbside the other day and wanted to know if it had caused any damage. And when you change your oil every 48,000 miles, this is how it looks like. The owner of this car had it in for some regular maintenance and said that he's been thinking about selling it. When asked for how much, he said, "Oh, I could easily get 10 G's for it." And this spark plug hadn't quite decided yet if it actually wanted to be a spark plug. And we finally found some footage of the instructor who's been teaching all quick lube shops on how to do an oil change. Customer states, "I just flushed the whole cooling system myself last weekend, brand new coolant and everything, but it still doesn't really get warm in the cab." And this customer said that his son had borrowed his car and hit a curb doing 75 miles per hour. This car had been in for a routine inspection when the mechanic found the exhaust had turned itself into a bubble machine. This truck came in right as the customer was about to pay $9,450 in cash for it, but the mechanic thankfully helped the customer dodge a pretty rusty bullet. The mechanic pulled this wheel of a customer's car and found a tire that had been quietly working on its own disappearing act 1 millimeter at a time. This fairly new Ford pickup truck was in because it had issues firing up ever since the owner had it in at a local dealership for some work on the cooling system. Customer states, "The car pulls a little to one side, but I think it just needs an alignment." Cars and women are pretty similar, just gotta rub them the right way until they get happy. This customer had been driving around on a tire that had apparently made a pretty firm decision about its future, and the rim was the first to find out about it. And whoever worked on this car does definitely not deserve to own a car in the first place. This Infiniti Q50 apparently makes its very own organic triple dark chocolate truffle fondue. And when you try to do your own wiring work while being all wired up yourself, you end up with some questionable results. This customer came in absolutely convinced the clunking sound was coming from a loose heat shield because his cousin had told him so over the phone. The mechanic got underneath the car and found this. The owner of this car rolled in on a tow truck because the car didn't want to start anymore. The engine turned out to be hydrolocked, and the customer also said that they had driven through a large section of water on a smaller road, but thought that the car could handle it. The owner of this car had been on his way to a job interview when the gear selector started feeling really vague and loose. The mechanic pulled the selector module and found the connector ball joint looking like this. This car came in with a handful of electrical issues and trouble starting after the customer had installed a new car battery by herself. And the owner of this car was absolutely certain the engine was running better than ever after his cousin had just finished tuning it for him. And this car rolled in because it had started to lose quite the amount of oil after another shop had done some engine work on it. This car rolled in after a local quick fix garage had done some work on the steering to give it a sportier feel, but the customer said it had felt a little floaty ever since. This truck was in because it had started clunking at all speeds after the customer had tried adjusting the ride height manually by cutting the springs. Customer states, car started chain smoking cheap cigarettes again, just like my ex-wife. And this Audi 200 was in after it had been sitting in a flooded garage for 5.5 years and the owner was trying to revive it again. The mechanic working on this one found a coolant hose that someone had clearly done their very best to save. This car was in for some new brake rotors because the customer said they had a strange wobbly feel in the steering wheel. When the mechanics had it on the lift, they noticed that someone who previously worked on the car had tried adjusting the steering but had instead made the car pretty unsafe to drive. And this car came in because the speakers didn't work after the customer had just bought the car off Craigslist from a short guy with a Hawaii t-shirt, a thick mustache, and lots of tattoos. This fleet car is operated by a company that does frequent inspections on construction sites to maintain workplace safety. But they had been so caught up inspecting other workplaces that they hadn't noticed they'd been driving around with a car full of concrete for about 8 months. And if you ever come in to swap your wheels at a garage, do this if you want to make your mechanic feel all warm and fuzzy inside. This guy was filmed as he thought he was using a tire pump to pump up his tires, but it turned out to be something else. The owner of this car had been coming in for regular service for years and was a lovely customer. The mechanic opened the trunk, lifted the floor panel to check the spare, and found that a small hardware store had moved in at some point. Customer came in saying that he's been getting louder and louder clunks the past few days and that he works in construction and needs the car done the same day because he needs it to get to work. Customer states, extensive exhaust rattles at all speeds. Please make the car stop sounding like a tin jar full of change when accelerating. This truck had been on its way back from dropping the customer's kids off at school when the customer noticed something new and exciting under the hood. This customer's Hyundai SUV was in because some of their auxiliary equipment that they had installed did not always work, and this is what the mechanics found. And this mechanic pulled the wheel on this one and found a brake rotor so far gone he could bend it with his bare hand like it was made of cardboard. The owner of this Golf rolled in because he could barely get it into any gear anymore. He also said that he normally parks it on the hillside street right outside his apartment. This Nissan X-Trail came in after the customer's girlfriend had lent it to her ex-husband who had all about totaled the front suspension after he slid into a curb while trying to do a handbrake turn in front of her in order to try and impress her to get her back. And this power steering fluid had been working overtime and had apparently developed an appreciation for a good cafe latte along the way. Customer states, car has a minor leak from the rear. The owner of this Fiat had apparently lost his keys at some point and needed a quick solution because he needed to get to work on time. So he went with a screwdriver and a little bit of electrical tape. Hey, if it works, I guess. And this car came in because the owner said, quote, brakes sound like a choir of cats sitting on a flaming hot grill rack. The owner of this car came in saying the interior had been smelling a little funny lately, but figured it was just a gym bag he forgot about. This semi-truck rolled in because it had some starting issues. And this customer had tried doing some repairs on his engine to make it run smoother, but was afraid he had messed up badly as he now has a strange clank and clink sound during idle.